to steer it back towards school, as we're preparing to start into some variety of synchronous live teaching, or at least being able to communicate with students that way, I have a very strong suspicion that this is going to be a conversation I'm going to end up having, because we've already had a lot of these talks in my classes early in the year. And I've been thinking a lot about how do I facilitate that kind of discussion. One, where I'm online, so you can't fully see body language. You don't understand everyone's circumstance. And two, to make sure that the discussion remains productive, not something that's going to create anxiety. If students ask me a question about college admissions and enrollment, I want to answer them honestly. Here's what I think. Here's what I've heard other people say. It's going to be really tough to have that conversation honestly and well. But I think we're about to be locally at a point where that's going to happen as we start live instruction. And, while I've been frustrated with a lot of the decisions we've been making, most of them are purposeful. I just, I don't always love the priorities, but I understand why we're doing what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I do have a concern, because I've heard this from teachers in several other places. There was a teacher who wrote, oh my God, it was a Facebook post that if you'd have printed, I bet it was 3 pages long, but I actually read the whole thing. And it was about how they're doing live instruction. They were prohibited from discussing anything related to the pandemic, to the disease.
Oh, really?
This woman in Oklahoma basically said, and I'm pretty sure it was Oklahoma, said that she was not allowed to discuss any of this, aside from the simple idea that school's closed for this reason. We have a reopening date at some point in May, and that this is what we're going to work on content and skills wise, and that they were supposed to defer and deflect everything they could, or to pass those questions along to principals or guidance counselors. And
okay. That answered the question I was going to ask. Is that seen as a mental health aspect of education, so we can't address it?
Well, and I mean, that's our local advice, and I've heard this from a lot of places, is that we're not, supposed to really be engaging with students about their individual feelings, which sounds strange because that's something we're told to do so often in the classroom. But to avoid those discussions of students' individual mental health and their feelings, and if it goes there, you pass it along to the counselors, who pass it along to someone else.
Because they're not authorized to do doctoring,
counseling,
or
whatever. And I really worry that we are about to be in the situation where this conversation needs to happen, and that we may also be put in a situation where we're told not to engage. And I think that's difficult, right? If you want to help kids with how to think, then it means you need to talk with them about the things they're thinking about.
Right.
And, within another week and a half, probably a lot of teachers, again, especially your English, social studies, places where there's more discussion-based activities, I think that this is going to hit hard. And the fact that we as teachers haven't been given any real guidance or intelligence information on the subject, I think it's going to make it difficult. I think, you're putting a lot of faith in the teachers to be keeping up with good information. And this is a time period when it's been incredibly difficult to keep up with good information. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that that's going to happen? Do you think this is going to be a conversation we're going to be having live with students?
Well, as we were talking, just a couple of minutes ago, it occurred to me that it would be so much better, this conversation, if we had some students, some college-bound students or job-bound students, because people going off to jobs as well. Well, those jobs don't exist right now, so they have the same concerns. They might be actually in an advantage in that they would be seriously thinking about, what am I going to do? Because I was planning on independence, income, pay for food, beer, whatever. Whereas with college, we're just kind of extending their childhood.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a little biased there, but they were just counting on that happening. But what the people we're leaving out of this conversation are, what are those students thinking right now? And as I've said, I've had a hard time getting any kind of substantive reaction, and I'd be interested in knowing why. So I was thinking it would be useful, productive, educational to have this same discussion, but include a few more people. But now I wonder whether we'd be able to.
Yeah, well, and that's where, trying to keep it outside of, avoid a conflict between my actual job and my podcasting hobby or whatever.
Right.
I have actually extended a soft invitation, just, what would you think about if, would you want to talk kind of deal, to students who I have tutored but not taught. So I have a professional relationship with outside of my actual employment with the local public schools. And, I don't know, that might still have a conflict since most of those kids still go to the same school system, but I haven't actually gotten any responses, which is funny. Not a yes, not a no. Now, most of them were just in the last day or two, so I don't worry about it. But I haven't gotten anything. And a few of those, I think, are students who, in better circumstances, would jump at that opportunity. So it'll be interesting. And yeah, like I said, I'm hoping to talk to a couple people in college, because I think that's an easier conversation to have and not have that concern. But over the next week or two, as we get better guidance from our employer, you're right. It might be important to include active current students in the conversation. I just really don't know what they would say, and that's why we should have a conversation.
Right. I'd love to have a roundtable type discussion on this. So if we could pull that off, that would be great.
Yeah. That's, I don't know. Well, let's see what our ever evolving guidance is. And if that seems like a thing that we can do, I think that would be informative as much for students, probably more so for adults. Because right now we have this, physical, obviously, physical distance. But I think what most teachers are experiencing, or what most of us are concerned about, probably doesn't match very well with what the average 16 or 17-year-old is thinking or feeling. And it might be very good for us to have a better sense of where students are coming from.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't
totally agree.
I don't know that information crosses channels enough when we're not in the same building. When I see the kids every day, every other day, we have that conversation. I know what's going on. I know how they're feeling. Usually, not always, but usually. When I don't see you for a month and we use different social media platforms and we don't have any conversations except about how do we get your grade up, then it's very difficult to know where anybody's at on any of these things. And that's probably not good for us. All right. Anything we missed?
Yeah, it's just a lot of unknowns. And I'm just curious as to how, the 17 and 18-year-olds and the 20 and the 21-year-olds are viewing all of these unknowns. And I hope they're seriously thinking about them.